I think you can see me on the screen, but that's me also. I'm the head of the Department of Paediatrics. Next slide, please. Paediatrics is a thriving department in Monash University. It's in the School of Clinical Sciences. We're located in a beautiful new building at the Monash Children's Hospital up on level 5, which is a 230-bed state-of-the-art facility, which is part of Monash Health, that also includes hospital activities at Dandenong and Casey, and a very strong community service as well. Our team consists of a group of incredible clinician researchers, scientists and the high-class educators, and we're providing crucial links between research, education and best clinical care. And we like to think that we're making discoveries that are going to be rapidly translated into care, and that we're taking the best of existing evidence to improve what we're doing in healthcare for children. Next slide, please, Amy. Oh, sorry, I forgot to do what Shelley asked us to do, and she's now doing it in the chat forum to let you know to please provide questions, ask questions via the Q&A or the chat function. We'll try and answer them as we go, or we'll save them up and answer some of them at the end if there's any left over. If you've got follow-up questions after someone's provided something in writing, please feel free to ask something further. So as I said, we encompass research from the laboratory, translation into clinical care and clinical research within paediatrics, and we cover the breadth of the age span, which is called child and adolescent health, from newborns through to young adulthood. So a lot of breadth, also covering all aspects of the human body, the brain, the heart, kidneys, lungs, and we're particularly interested in things that are different about children, like their neurodevelopment and the fact that their physiology is different and in transition at different stages of their lives. Next slide, please, Amy. If you want to know more about us, you can head to the website. There's information about what we're doing in research, the way the precinct works, which you can see on the slide there is the beautiful facility that we now have in level 5, but also available graduate research projects. And we'll just cover the tip of the iceberg of what's available tonight as part of our showcase. Next slide, please. Our postgraduate coordinator is on the call, and you'll hear from her later, Rosemary Horne, but that's so you recognise her when she comes up, and these are her contact details. Next slide, please. In child health and child and adolescent health, we really believe that children are the future, and opportunities for making discoveries and improving care that's going to change things for a child is an enormous investment in the future of Australia. Next slide, please. So without further ado, we're going to move into the different research areas, or at least a taster of those for you tonight. Next slide, please, Amy. We're starting off with Professor Rosemary Horne, who you saw before as the postgrad coordinator. Do feel free to ask any questions either in the Q&A or chat function. Thanks very much, Rosemary.
Thanks, Katrina. So as Katrina says, if you've got any questions, just send me an email and I'll endeavour to put you in touch with any supervisors of projects you're interested in. So I'm going to tell you about the research of my group, and our research focuses on sleep in infants and children, and particularly sleep on physiology. So we are the leading group in paediatric sleep research in Australasia, and we're ranked in the top 5 internationally. So we have a really strong research track record. So you probably all just think sleep is very ho-hum, but sleep is the 3rd pillar of health after diet and exercise, and it's essential for normal growth and development. During infancy and childhood, sleep is at a lifetime maximum, with infants sleeping about 3/4 of every 24 hours and children sleeping about half. So when you go to sleep, your blood pressure and heart rate fall. So sleep is restorative to the cardiovascular system. It's also essential for learning and memory. And any disruption to sleep has significant impacts in children than it has in adults, as the areas of the brain and the organ systems are rapidly developing during infancy and childhood. So our sleep studies are very clinically focused, and they're conducted in conjunction with Monash Newborn and the Monash Children's Sleep Centre. Looking at the next slide, please, Amy. So we have a number of projects available for students, and we welcome anybody coming to talk to us. We have a very experienced team of supervisors, having supervised over 40 honours students and 15 PhD students. Most honours students will have a publication at the end of their honours year, and PhD students will have several first author publications. So if you're interested in any aspect of sleep, just contact me and we'll be able to discuss this. Thanks very much.
Good. So welcome everyone. So my name's Nataraja, and I'm one half of the photo here. That's because both myself and Maurizio are the Paediatric Surgical Academic Leads within the Department of Paediatrics. So welcome tonight. Next slide, please, Amy. So to give you an overview, we've got multiple research streams. I think at the last count, we had about 32 projects ongoing within our department. And just to give you an idea, we've got plenty of clinical research. We've got multiple randomized controlled trials, prospective and retrospective trials. And we look at all the common conditions in children. And we've recently published RTCs in high impact journals. We're also very involved in global health research and innovation in low and middle income countries. And we work with organizations such as the Royal College of Surgeons, the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons, and the WHO. And then to complete our triad, we then also have educational research and centered along simulation-based medical and surgical education, and also innovation and emerging technologies. And we're certainly one of the premier departments for surgical simulation or pediatric surgical simulation in Australasia. Thanks, Amy. Next slide. And this is an example of one of our courses. We've got all the surgical kits. These are one of the models we've developed. And certainly we've got some of the best facilities in the country. And we're just looking at the way, how and why people learn. This is one of our randomized controlled trials. And I think if Amy, if you just cycle through them, just to give you an idea of what we're doing, we've got 2 other randomized controlled trials running. And we've also got these are low and middle income country settings where we've actually used simulation to change a country's practice and actually improve healthcare for children on a national scale. And this is where when we published our overview. And just the last photos here are a new research stream, which we completed a project today or this year. And we've got other projects running with augmented reality for teaching, training, and also surgical simulation. So thanks, everyone.
Okay, I'm next. So my name is Atul Malhotra, and I'm a neonatologist and a clinician scientist at Monash Children's Hospital and the Department of Paediatrics at Monash Uni. So next slide, please, Amy. I've focused on a few of our research streams and projects available for next year, both as honors projects or PhD projects going forward. I'm interested in neurodevelopment and neuroscience particularly, but there are a number of other things I focus on as well. So just to give you an example, we have a huge wealth of data of MRI from our babies in the newborn period, and together with people at Monash University neuroscience department, we are looking at image post-processing of that MRI data. So that's one stream. We've got a body of work in low birth weight and small babies, and we are looking at a prospective study of body composition in small babies. We are about to start a randomized trial for thermoregulation for these babies, and it'll be great to have a student on for looking at their body composition as well. And then more excitingly, we have a new auscultation device which we have developed with the Department of Faculty of Computer Engineering and Computer Sciences at the Monash University campus. And we are looking for a student to prospectively evaluate that auscultation device, both in adults as well as children. Next slide, please, Amy. So these are the clinical projects. I'm also a scientist and I work at the Hudson along with my scientist colleagues. And we have a number of preclinical projects where we basically look at evaluating perinatal brain injury, which is brain injury acquired during the pregnancy and early neonatal period in animal and preclinical models of those injuries. And I'm particularly interested in stem cell therapies, having led a couple of trials in babies, and we have a number of studies which have saved brain tissue available for students to take on to evaluate next year. But if a student wants to go on to do a PhD, then we could involve them in prospective new studies with new animal experiments if they are interested. So thank you and look forward to hearing from some of you.
Okay, yeah, welcome and thanks for your interest in the research of the Department of Paediatrics. And I'm representing the lab of Marcel Nold and myself, Claudia Nold. So it's a cross-disciplinary lab, and the big overarching theme is interventional immunology in early life diseases. Marcel is professor for pediatric and consultant neonatologist, clinician scientist, and I'm a basic researcher. So next slide, please. The lab is, as I already mentioned, cross-disciplinary, so it works with the Department of Paediatrics and the hospital, but also the Hudson Institute of Medical Research, that similar Ritchie Center, what mentioned Atul. And we have, we are investigating inflammation, and our lab is immunology based. We're looking for mechanisms, underlying mechanisms of disease, and we have our goal is to look into new therapeutic strategies for early life disease. So we have 3 themes, and the first one you see here is we look longitudinally into clinical studies and investigate the immunology, coagulation, but also microbia or the microbiome, and looking into the homeostasis, which is important in health and also disease. So we have 3 studies there. We have also lab-based preclinical models of disease. And as you can see here, we have some examples. So one of example here on the right, you see the lungs where we investigated bronchopulmonary dysplasia, which is a severe disease in preterm infants. And thirdly, we also design and develop novel anti-inflammatory drugs. So this is more the translational aspect, and altogether those 3 are really to improve early life disease outcome. So next slide, please. Here you can see the team. So we are a mix of research assistants. We have had many students in the past, and also we have study nurses and postdocs. So usually we look very well after our students. We also have industry experience, so you get to peek into industry projects and see the link what is needed possibly if you want to do an internship later. And up here I have selected local collaborations, clinical collaborations, and you heard Ram speaking, Atul, and later Ed. So we have really the close link between basic science and clinical science. And I always say that science provides opportunity. And you see Stephen here in the picture, and Holly, they, for example, were able to go overseas because a PhD or a scientific degree gives you the opportunity to work anywhere in the world. And one went to Japan, the other one to Germany. And I think to have a science aspect in your track record is always good, and it opens opportunities. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Ed Giles, paediatric gastroenterologist, and to sort of second a lot of the comments that have already been made and all the collaborations, you'll see that we all work quite closely together. I obviously deal with the most important organ, or at least during lockdown it is, if my relationship with my fridge is anything to go by. But the disease that I'm interested in is largely inflammatory bowel disease. So you see an image, and I've become very interested in how we maintain homeostasis with the millions of bacteria and other species in the gut. So next slide, thanks Amy. So just in the short amount of time, I've just listed some key words really of the things that I'm interested in from a research perspective. And a lot of this is done with a couple of laboratories at the Hudson Institute and some really world-class researchers publishing in very high impact journals. And we work very closely, particularly, but not exclusively, in the IBD space. And I co-supervise a number of students and who get samples from endoscopy from our paediatric patients, and we grow and are finding lots of really exciting bacteria. And there's an image there where we're able to grow so-called mini guts, which we can use to develop experimental therapies. Next slide, thanks, Amy. And really the overarching aim is to move into therapy. And there's a lot of, probiotics and people hear about that, but our group is really looking to develop better science around this space, so-called microbiome-based medicine. So we're actively recruiting students both at the very basic side of science, but also moving this towards clinical trials. And this is in a really active clinical area where we look after very young people with bowel disorders, but right through to a sort of transition and young adult clinic. So any interest in the gut, in immunology, in the microbiome, please get in contact, and look forward to hearing from some of you. Thanks very much.
Hi, I'm Flora Wong. I'm a neonatologist, and my research interest is in neonatal brain injury. So brain injury in newborn babies, both term and preterm. And I run the neonatal brain protection laboratory. We offer a number of projects, but I'll just go through some broad category of projects. So we run both clinical and experimental studies to try to understand brain injury in preterm babies who have to undergo neonatal intensive care at Monash Newborn at Monash Children's Hospital. For example, one of our projects tries to investigate what can predict brain disease in small babies. We use things like heart rate variability, for example, from the ECG that's continuously recorded in small babies. And we try to use that to predict which baby might develop a hemorrhage in the brain or develop infection. Next slide, please. We also have projects with data that's already collected, and we're looking for students to further analyze the data. For example, we've got a large database collected on babies who are in different sleep positions. For example, babies who might sleep on the supine position on their back, or maybe babies who sleep on their belly. And we've collected a lot of data already on their brain oxygenation during different sleep positions, and also when they're having periodic breathing pattern. So we want to see how babies in the neonatal intensive care unit might be affected by their sleep positions and their breathing patterns in terms of the effect on the brain oxygenation. We also look at how blood pressure medications might affect brain oxygenation and brain activities in the animal model. So we've got a preterm lamb model set up, and we've collected quite a lot of data already on cerebral oxygenation, as well as the brain specimens that we would like students to be involved in analyzing that data and looking at how different medications might actually cause brain injury or affect the brain oxygenation. So we would like to, if you'd like to talk more about any of these projects, please contact me. And this is just a broad categories of projects. So we can look into which aspect you'll be involved in those projects.
Hi, my name's Alex Ewer. I am a clinical psychologist at Monash Children's Hospital and a researcher with the Department of Paediatrics. And I'm pleased to be here on behalf of my team, which is a multidisciplinary research team of clinician researchers with various different backgrounds and expertise. We're led by Professor Katrina Williams, who's a paediatrician and public health physician. She covers a wide range of areas. We have Tamara May, who is a psychologist and senior research fellow, who is also a data whiz. She's got a computing background, and she's really interested in using big data sets like Medicare and NDIS to understand prevalence and trends for children with autism. Amanda Brignall is a speech pathologist and researcher, and she's also interested in working with these big data sets and looking at prognosis, as well as understanding presentations and interventions associated with communication for children with autism and their families. Georgie Cox is a psychologist and researcher who's interested in parent mental health and wellbeing and looking at ways to support families. And then I am interested in child mental health, as well as assessments and interventions, tailoring interventions according to need for children with autism and their families. So if we have a look at the next slide, our projects can be categorized broadly into 3 different areas. So the first is looking at understanding causes and characteristics and developmental pathways of children with autism. So one study that we have going on at the moment, for example, is recruiting children who have lost skills, otherwise known as autistic regression, and trying to understand through looking at biomarkers or better understand what's going on for these children and looking at their outcomes. The large data sets also fits into that category. The second is looking at optimizing support and care for children with autism. So part of that is improving inpatient care at Monash Children's, and that involves partnering with different departments across the hospital. We also have projects that are evaluating our existing practice. So currently that's looking at telehealth assessments and trying to understand what might be trauma versus what are behaviours that are more likely to be autism, and developing new guidelines in these sorts of areas. And then the third category of research that we're doing is looking at trials and interventions. So some of the work that I'm looking at doing is looking at anxiety and evaluating social group interventions. We do a lot of systematic reviews looking at treatments and medications currently used in the autism field, and using technology, app development for supporting parent wellbeing and mental health. So if any of these sort of areas interest you, please do get in touch, either on Supervisor Connect or emailing us directly, or you can email me and I can direct you to the right place. Thanks.
Hi. So my name is Christine, and this is actually a picture of me in the Netherlands last year, where I was able to present my PhD at the Congress of Joint Neonatal European Societies. So this was one of the many opportunities I've had in the Department of Peds. Could I get the next slide, please? Thank you. So I did a Bachelor's of Biomedical Science, and then I continued on to do an honours and a PhD with Claudia Nold. My project was quite translational in that it involved understanding the mechanisms as well as investigating potential interventions for the treatment of bronchoalveolar dysplasia, or BPD, which is a lung disease that affects extremely preterm infants. I've been a part of many collaborations, one of which was with the Australian Synchrotron. That video you see is of a live mouse angiography we did to understand the pulmonary vascular changes that occur in BPD. Next slide, please. Thank you. So other collaborators I've worked with are both local and international, and I've also had some experience with industry such as CSL. I've also had an amazing opportunity to attend as well as present other conferences that are both paediatric as well as immunology, and they were interstate and overseas. And I've also taught science at different levels as well. So I've taught undergrads through the BME 308 unit at Monash Uni, talked about careers in science to high school students at the John Monash Science School. And we also went down to local childcare centre and took a microscope and showed kids what bugs look like under the microscope. I also had an opportunity to work in a consulting role with a consulting-based company in Germany. So I've had a lot of experiences that have given me different perspectives of research and what future careers could be like. So if you're interested in any of the projects the panelists have showcased this evening, please get in touch with them. Thank you.
So we haven't had any questions yet. I've just unmuted myself. Sorry, we haven't had any questions yet. It's a fabulous photo. Oh, hang on. A question about your honours topic, Christine.
Yeah, so my honours project was on bronchopulmonary dysplasia, or BPD. It primarily focused on a mouse model, so preclinical study, where we looked at the potential intervention of interleukin-1 receptor antagonists as a treatment for that disease. Did that answer the question? I'm not really sure if that's what was asked.
And did that follow into your PhD, Christine?
Yes, so based on that project, we took it, extended it further into a almost 4-year PhD project, where we got to do that synchrotron work, looking at pulmonary hypertension that occurs secondary to BPD.
Great, thank you. I think we've taken you on a whirlwind trip through the many different types of research, many different topics, many different age groups that we work with. So it might be hard to come up with questions now, but if you're anything like me, you'll leave and think, oh yes, I should have asked that question. So please don't hesitate to get in touch. People have given you their contact details, or if it's easier to remember one thing, Rosemary will direct any questions that you have to relevant laboratory researchers. Okay, another question, excellent. What opportunities are available for medical students not currently doing honours? I'm not quite sure what you're asking there. There's the very short SIP program in year 5. We also have medical students approach us and ask about doing some volunteer connection to research activities. That sometimes is somewhat constrained because of confidentiality and ethics arrangements, but certainly you've heard some people saying we're using existing data or we are conducting systematic reviews, and so some med students are currently joined into those activities. We don't have a formal summer school program at the moment, but if students are interested in summer school, they can approach researchers and discuss that possibility. Honours starts at different times. I'll let you answer that, Rosemary.
What was the question?
The question is, when does honours normally start, especially taking COVID into account? Will this be online based? And they're just got some concerns around visas.
Okay, so there are 2 honours intakes a year, one in March and one that has just started just now. We have been running all our honours programs this year virtually, so both for the medical students and also for the science. Some of the projects had to be changed so that you're using previously collected data, but some of the animal studies are going ahead as they would usually. And to answer the question about summer projects, we can arrange for you to do a summer project through the Hudson Institute, in which you get paid a small amount of money to ditch.
Thanks, Rosemary. Someone's asked a question particularly of, oh, sorry, Rosemary, I thought you'd stop because you've been breaking up a little bit. Apologies.
Yeah, sorry. I have stopped.
We're also at 6:30 and I'm afraid we have to run to a very tight time frame. So I think I've only just got time to say thank you very much, everyone, for attending the session. If there's a couple of questions remaining, in particular for people, Ram and Christine, if they don't respond while we're online, perhaps you could shoot them emails at the addresses that you have for them now. I'm sure they'd be very happy to talk further with you. Thank you, and we look forward to welcoming you to the Department of Paediatrics in the near future. I hope our whirlwind has given you a taste of the very exciting opportunities that exist to engage with a laboratory or clinical research in a way that's going to really make a difference to children's lives. So thanks very much, and we'll say bye for now.